Hello, everybody, and welcome to some stat check bonus content. I am here joined by a whole smorgasbord of people who are angry about the Eldar changes. To be angry about Eldar changes with you guys all. So it is 5 p.m., about 4 hours after the Dataslate went live, about 5 hours after we started seeing it showing up on our apps. We're here to give you as much as we can an interpretation of how the game is going to change, what the meta is going to be like after this, winners, losers, all that kind of thing. Obviously, prefacing this with the data's been out for 4 hours. I don't think any of you guys have played a game with it yet. I definitely haven't. I've certainly been thinking about it almost constantly for the past 5 hours, but I don't know how you guys are feeling. Take everything we see here with a pinch of salt when it comes to meta relevance and commentary and things like that, because quite frankly, it's too early to know. We will figure it out as we go. I expect on the main show on Tuesday, and whenever XM1 and the Matrix record next, that they will have some pretty good ideas from having played some games. But for the time being, we're just here to be reactionary. Everybody knows it. Every other content creator has already been online. I've seen Art of War and Hellstorm, and I'm sure Trevi and Auspix Tactics and all that have been live yet. So we're a little behind the curve because, well, frankly, it's 12 p.m. in the US, so you guys needed some time to wake up. How's everybody getting on? How is everybody feeling about the slate?
I work half days on Thursday.
I am at work, Dick Johnson. I took my lunch break now so that I could spend an hour talking about this nonsense.
Ding, ding, ding.
This is why we scheduled it ahead of time, and why we didn't do it any earlier was Nathan had to book a conference room. I was working until noon. Yeah, good times.
I actually do not work. I do not work on Thursdays.
You just don't work on Thursdays, Tim? Just not at all?
Nope.
That's nice.
Nope. I just don't work on Thursdays.
It's pretty great.
I love it.
So I suppose the easiest place to start is let's talk very general, high level, how we feel about the balanced data slate. And then we'll start getting some specifics. Basically, structure of this is going to be, we're going to go through the general core rule changes, and then we're going to go through each army one by one, giving them a super high level, how it's feeling. People are moving pictures around. This is very worrying. Trying to give generally a high level overview, what we think, whether we think an army is a winner or a loser, how we think they'll fit into the general state of the meta, and then at the end, a little bit of what the meta is going to be like. So I'm going to hand over to Jeremy, who has done all of the grunt work on this. Jeremy, would you like to tell us a bit about what has changed, or about how you're feeling about the general state of changes?
Yeah, let's just go through it. General state. I'm quite happy actually. GW didn't just do points; they did rules changes. They looked at internal faction balance. So tweaked every army. Every army has seen some level of point changes, even down to the agents of the Imperium. And so this was actually a full run through of things. I'm actually really happy to see the changes that they've done. I feel they could have gone further with some of them, particularly Eldari, and they may have gone a little bit too far with others. We'll talk about those when we get through the various factions. But yeah, I'm fairly content with it. We'll see what the meta shakes out. There's definitely going to be a lot of changes over the next few weeks as events adopt this. Nathan?
So, in the standard dad fashion, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed in some of the changes. I'm actually generally fairly happy with the slate in a lot of ways, but I think that they made some mistakes, mostly to Eldar, where they kind of undercorrected, and their video explanation of it kind of didn't make me very happy with GW's kind of balance approach to this particular patch. But otherwise, I thought, looking at kind of the bottom factions, looking at Death Guard, who I think they actually did a really good job of bringing up. I think they actually did a relatively good job of bringing up the bottom factions. They just didn't do a good job of dethroning our S+++ tier faction to more than just dethroning it to an S tier faction. That's kind of where I'm sitting with it. Otherwise, I think the slate was fine. Solid 7.5 out of 10.
Cliff?
How about you, Cliff?
I'm going to put my reasonable commentator hat on for a second. From a meta approach of what are they willing to change when things get out of hand? Cool that they're willing to change lots of stuff simultaneously. Core rules, points values, faction-based rule sets. That's good. We should be excited that they're willing to do that. I'm going to take off my reasonable commentator hat now and put on my have you learned nothing from previous iterations of factions that held such dominant places on the meta for months at a time? We did this with Harleys. We saw it with Tyranids. in the actual video that accompanied the release today, the folks talked about like wanting to drop 5 to 10. They don't want to drop more than 5 to 10 points off of a faction's win rate. Like, perhaps a reminder is needed. Eldar said it's 68%, just the win rate. Never mind overrep, never mind player population, never mind positive win records and all the other various stats that we track. Like, what are we doing? Your goal is actually knocking 18 points off of that as the ideal. Like, you got to swing hard. So I expect that we'll see Eldar continue to be S-class. They'll drop somewhere between 5 and 10 points, and we'll relive this like, you guys don't understand the core issue. It's not just points problem over and over again. I'm also sad because Deathwatch and Imperial Knights caught it hard, and like, those two of my favorite factions. But aside from that, good stuff all around. Like Tau coming up, that's cool. I'm excited for Tau. Necron's potentially a problem. Death Guard player is real hype for you guys. There's a lot of focus on some of the bottom factions and getting them back up there, so that's actually really cool. I'm excited about that. But you too.
Yeah, I think I'll echo everyone's sentiments here. Overall, I think it's a good thing. I think we thought that it was mostly just going to be points changes, and then start getting some rules changes, core rules and actual army rules. I was impressed at the amount of lower tier factions that were addressed quite substantially. That outweighs the disappointment at some of the nerfs to the higher ends, because historically GW has been had a poor track record at bringing up the bottom factions. Usually it's just lip service, and then like maybe like a 1 or 2 peripheral changes that don't really affect that much. So very happy to see that, like Votan, Death Guard, and some other stuff. I think overall for your general layperson, this patch is a win. And then it's going to be a side grade / slight disappointment if you're at the cutting edge player.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. My broad feelings on this kind of, very similar. I think for the average tournament player, this patch is going to be fantastic because, I think at the top end, the people that, you're playing against in the finals of a GT, the finals of a major, you're probably still going to lose to Eldar more often than not. But they've done a good job of giving every army at least some tools where it feels like if the other player makes mistakes, if you get some high rolls, there is capacity there for Eldar to start losing games. They don't have as many get out of jail free cards. You're not dealing with an Overwatching Wraith Knight in your own turn, auto-6ing you off the board, right? You just have that little bit of safety net, which is nice. It's just a nice thing to have access to. And then when you're playing in those sort of like intermediate levels, if you're playing against a weaker Eldar player with a less optimized list, your army probably now has the tools where you can deal with some of the Eldar shit. Same with Gene Circles, same with Custodies. There are just, for the average person at the average tournament, this patch seems great. Genuinely very, very happy with it, very impressed with that. Things like 10-man Custody Guard squads that were impossible to deal with just vanished. Like, that's not a thing anymore. It's been Thanos snapped. So you don't have that kind of the same level of gatekeeper in that sort of like mid-pool environment, or even, winning GT's level. You play against that list in the fans of Super Ranger, it's a lot more honest about what it's doing now. And I think that's honestly for the best. As much as I think that Eldar could have been hit more, I'm still pretty confident that I can beat most Eldar players now. So assuming I'm playing a strong army. And whether that means that I lose them in the finals of the GT instead of the round 1 or round 2, fine, whatever. I can work with that. I can try and tailor my list for just Eldar now. There's more scope for making them have weaknesses.
You don't have to worry about phantasming Wraith Knights on WTC terrain, just kind of poking out, poking back, poking out, poking back.
It was the Incarn phantasming that gave me aneurysms. It was definitely not.
This is true. All right, shall we quickly go over the balanced data slate for anyone who has not taken a look at it yet?
Yeah, let's do rules.
If you haven't read the balanced data slate, go and read the balanced data slate. Like, just read it. It's not long. It's 3 pages and some points changes.
Goonhammer is definitely has a pretty good summary of changes as well on their website. So go read it, and they have a pretty good summary of all the changes as well.
There's very few changes here. The biggest ones, and they actually put them in the order of the impact. Devastating wounds. It's now just an attack that you can't take saves against. You can take feel no pains, but it no longer does mortal wounds, which means it doesn't spill, and it's still allocated after everything else. There's some weird interactions that can occur there, but generally they don't spill anymore
real good
now.
At character sniping.
It is real good at character sniping. This is true.
It's also still very good at picking up like elite infantry and vehicles, right? Like 100%. A custodian guard unit still doesn't want to get shot by a wraith cannon. as an example. Nor does a vehicle.
Actually worse. Way worse.
It is definitely worse for Custodies now. Yeah, definitely, definedly worse.
This
That's
change is
a good change. Great change.
This is a very good change. It keeps devastating wounds in the game, keeps weapons with devastating wounds relevant. It basically is just ignore invulns now. Except it has infinite
with
AP.
the general case, the armor saves are a lot higher this edition relative to AP values. Ignoring just straight armor saves is very, very good too.
Yeah.
I would expect to see like Starnger come in the woodwork a lot more than that. They actually didn't love it being mortal wound because there was a lot of stuff that had a feel no pain against that. But now it just being ignore save. I think Starngard get a ton of mileage from that, which might be why they went up.
Agreed. Modifying stratagem CP cost. You can only do it to battle tactics now. Simple as that. You can only make free and use twice battle tactics, and you can only vect. So the Calidus, Watchmaster, actual vect only works on battle tactic stratagems. We have a spreadsheet that I'm actually going to drop in here that has all the categories for the stratagems for currently released books. And I'm actually going to drop it right here in chat.
I'll be honest, from a bookkeeping and quality of life point of view, I hate this change.
It's a bad change, but
not a fan of it. I also think you might have issues of people conveniently forgetting what categories are. Also, speaking of categories, it was brought to my attention that the stratagems are color coded not for the type of stratagem they are, but for when they are used.
For whose turn? It's either your turn, your opponent's turn, or both turns.
Yep.
So
it's not great.
This little handy thing that lists everything for all of the armies that you need to be aware of. And I'll make this so it's
also worst case scenario in case you still have Vect in your list or any kind of CP adjustment. The command reroll is a battlefield tactic. So you can, worst case scenario, you can always choose to make a command reroll free or Vect command reroll if you don't know what to do.
Yep. Anthony wants to buy work break so I can scream into the void. Yes, you're more than welcome to. Overwatch, biggest change here, cannot be used indirect. You can use it with indirect weapons, but you have to have line of sight. And you can never use it with a Titanic unit, which is massive.
Huge. Big change. Very big change.
Yeah.
Very good change.
Great change. Like, I think Fire Overwatch was one of the biggest problems that we had in the edition. Restricting it and making it so that you actually have to be able to see the target you're going after, and also meaning that you don't get huge efficiency out of the strat by using on a 700 or 500 point model is great. Insane Bravery, next change. This one's kind of, I don't know why, but it basically, Insane Bravery is the same as it was in 9th edition now. It's still 1 CP, but you have to use it before you take a Battle Shock test in your command, in the Battle Shock phase, sub-phase of your command phase. And then it's just considered to be automatically passed. Also, it's once per game. So very, yeah. Then Ruins, this is the bigger change. Towering basically does almost nothing. The only thing that Towering does now is that you can see normally when you are within the ruin, not wholly within the ruin. So yeah, it's a good change.
Yeah, Towering gives you
yeah, or as
this is the Towering change we kind of wanted, right?
This is the Towering change that Lone Star Open used 2 months ago. So,
and it makes sense. This is the way that Towering should have worked the whole edition. The other version of it was silly.
And yes, Gerard, the big question is why once per game on Insane Bravery? We don't know.
Everybody's been whinging like shit that Battle Shock doesn't matter, so make it
now
matter.
It matters.
Yeah, now
it definitely matters a lot more.
There you go. There you go. You got exactly what you all asked for.
We'll quickly touch on the faction rules now. Oh, go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say, like, exactly what it just said. It didn't matter, and now it does. The changes by themselves, either before you roll or once per game, would probably not be enough. But now with less games getting decided on turn 2 or turn 3, because broadly damage is down, and then there's a real choice to preempting the stratagem usage versus waiting to see if you just happen to fail, and then only once per game. Now Battle Shock is going to matter. So I think that one should be pretty self-explanatory.
Yep, I like it.
There's still a lot of units that don't take Battle Shock. Like any 2-model unit can never take a Battle Shock test unless it's from an outside source, which means it's never eligible for that stratagem. But, you got to make a decision now. Yeah. You're going to have one unit on an objective that gets hurt. How much do you want that primary?
Correct. So then they did a bunch of faction rules changes. They hit some of the top, some of the bottom. Adeptus Custodes, biggest changes here. Unwavering Sentinels, which is the fight first stratagem, is now an epic deed stratagem. It was a battle tactic before, so you can't fight first for free or fight first twice on objectives.
Except with
Great change.
Trajan.
Trajan stocks up.
Yeah, Trajan songs up. And then Custodian Guard and Custodian Wardens, they both had their unit size changed to 4 to 5 models.
Yep.
We talked about this earlier when we were doing our initial impressions. You no longer are dealing with that 10-man brick or 6-man brick of Wardens, because the Warden size never made sense because they were box-sized and they came in boxes of 5. And then Virtus Praetors, they changed them to 2 to 3.
Still
which,
bad.
Adeptus Mechanicus, big buff to Sakatari Rangers and Vanguard. They just increased their invuln and their armor saves by 1, so they now have a 4-up armor save and a 5-up invuln, right back to what they had in 9th.
Yep.
Nice change.
Great change.
Eldari, amazing change. Phantasm is now infantry only. Like, just
It's definitely an
fantastic change.
improvement. Probably should also be 2 CP, but definitely an improvement.
Agents of the Imperium, itty bitty tweak here. Exaction squads are now box locked.
Means we
Take them in units of 10.
means kill team players will probably be able to buy exaction squads again, and it won't just be 40K players buying.
Let's
all
not
the
get
bombs.
hasty now, shall we?
I'm not.
Yeah,
saying
well,
that-
everybody gonna get your Voidsman arms back.
Exactly. Death Guard, huge change here. They're spread the sickness detachment rule. They've now added an entire contagion to their rule. So the way that it works now is that at the beginning of the battle, so actually declare battle formation. So when you're allocating your characters to units and putting stuff in transports and all of that, you choose one of 3 auras, which apply to everyone within contagion range. So Skull Squirm Blight. It reduces weapon skill and ballistic skill characteristics of units affected by 1. Then you have Rattle Joint Egg. While an enemy unit is within contagion range of this unit, worsen the save characteristic of models in that unit by 1. And then you have Scabrous Soul Rot. While an enemy unit is within contagion range of this unit, worsen the leadership and objective control characteristics of that enemy unit by 1 to a minimum of 1. And then they did a little bit cleanup where they mentioned that characteristics were being modified, not just a characteristic. Amazing change for Death Guard. Like, now they just got a straight up buff from this, and they actually have, that's -1 save or -1 weapon skill and ballistic skill. Even the -1 leadership and OC is a massive impact into many different armies. And the fact that you choose this at battle formations means that you know exactly what you're playing into.
It's a great change for Death Guard.
It's real big. I definitely felt like I was missing 1 AP just like on everything. So getting it back is nice.
Yep. So then we have Death Watch. All of the special issue ammunition stratagems are back to being how they used to work in previous editions, in that they only affect bolt weapons. And they gave us a full definition of what is a bolt weapon. I'm not reading them all, but basically it's anything that had both in the world or replaced a bolt gun.
I won't lie, I just find this amusing because people were using like special rounds on Hellblasters, and it's like, how do you load a Kraken round into a Hellblaster plasma rifle?
Or on frag cannons?
Yeah, that's later squads.
Yeah, exactly. All of that is that's a bad change for Death Watch, but it's a change that made sense to make.
Yes.
Gene Stealer Cults, massive changes here. Basically, the sum of it is that units now only ever come back on a 5-up when they die. You add 1 if it's battle line, so your Neophytes and Acolytes will always come back on 4-ups, and you add a further 1 if it is the first or second battle round, which means that on a 3-up in battle round 1 and 2, your battle line comes back, and on a 4-up, all your other units come back for battle round 1 and 2, and then battle round 3 onwards it gets worse. So ostensibly what this means is that you will get more stuff back earlier in the game than later in the game, and it doesn't change anything for the non-battle line units for the first 2 battle rounds. It's more just reducing by a significant amount the number of battle line units that come back in all of the battle rounds, because it's no longer automatic.
Yep.
It turns out having infinite stuff was pretty good.
Yeah. Outrider gangs, they tweaked this very slightly, but basically the Adelan Jackals, when they come back from Cult Ambush, they have to be within 9 inches of a battlefield edge and touching a token. Means that you can actually fit them and gives them a little bit more flexibility. Yeah, it's more just a quality of life change. So I guess a small buff to
Yeah,
them.
because they were previously within 6, and then
Yeah.
when they came back from change from battle from a token, it was a lot easier to have them strung out. Then it became very, very difficult very quickly.
Yeah, so they've found the middle ground on that. Grey Knights, single change. This is a nerf. Haloed in Soulfire is now a strategic ploy. It was a battle tactic before. Then we have Imperial Knights, my poor big boys. Bondsman abilities. They no longer affect the Questoris chassis. They only affect the armor that they're put on.
Too much. It's too much.
It's great.
This was too
Good
much.
change.
That on its own probably would have been fine. But then they made Thunderstomp an epic deed. They made Trophy Claim 2 CP because Thunderstomp was a battle tactic before. They made Trophy Claim, which is the +1 to wound, and then you can't use it again unless you kill it. And if you do kill it, you get 1 CP back. 2 CP. And they made Valiant Last Stand, which is your fight on death, 2 CP. So they got hit pretty hard here. Then we have Leagues of Votann. Their Ruthless Efficiency Detachment rule. Basically, it changes. So instead of just picking 1 unit at the beginning of the battle, you now can pick, depending on the battle size, but for our purposes, which is competitive play at Strike Force, you can pick 4 units. And those 4 units are treated as always having 2 tokens on them, which means that all of your units will have +1 to hit and +1 to wound them for the entire game. Similarly, they modified it so that if any of these 4 units are killed, then in your next command phase, you will get the bonus command points that are generated from that. Massive change for them.
Huge.
Because-
It's just there are armies that only have 4 units.
Yeah. Like, I mean, a really good example of this was, it doesn't exist anymore, but the old 30 custodian guard bricks. You just go, yes, yes, yes.
Or Harper's Grey Knight list, or
Yep.
any big demons based list.
Yeah, massive points to them. And then Space Marines, Desolation Squads are now 5-mans. That's it.
Good.
That's a good change.
I'm so
Yeah.
bored of using that unit.
And then, so that's the balanced Dataslate. They also updated the rules commentary. I'm going to skim through this really fast. PDF Compare is amazing for this. But basically what they did was they added a note at the very beginning that anything with an asterisk in front of it, you ignored if you're using the balanced Dataslate. And that's because everything with an asterisk in the rules commentary just refers to devastating wounds, which were changed and no longer function the same as they do in the base game. They now work differently. And then the other changes that they made, so you can see this is one of the devastating wounds entries. Another one of them. It's just a line change. And then the changes that they made here was they made they just removed, they added a note about towering to the within, wholly within and out and outside of terrain note, because towering now allows you to just be within and shoot. Then the other one, this is the biggest change, is they've added a note about vehicles with bases. And I'm just going to, essentially what it is it's how things should have functioned from the start. But essentially the way that it works is that if it is a vehicle with a base, you will always measure distances from the nearest point on that vehicle, so the hull. And you use, well, the base or the hull, whichever is closest. Similarly, for engagement range, you consider yourself within base-to-base contact when you are within 0 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of any part of that hull.
It makes things like Night Spinners, Ghost Arcs, all that kind of thing a lot harder to hide, a lot easier to deploy units out of, and a lot easier to charge.
Yep.
All good changes.
Similarly, Raiders become no longer a 60 mil base that you have to screen out. They now are the full profile that you have to screen out.
Yep.
And I believe that is it. Yep, that's it for the rules commentary. So yeah, let me quickly move this over. Shall we jump right into army impacts?
Yeah, let's
Because
do
the
it.
MFM changes are massive. This is in the order of the armies that I own, so I apologize to anyone who's using this sheet. I made this for myself and then I shared it. So obviously Space Marines are the first ones. If anyone wants to follow along, there's already 80 plus people watching. I will drop the link in chat. It's also in the video description. We are going to publish this as a podcast, so it will also be in the podcast description.
Oh yeah, we did miss one thing, which was that shooting units thing where they count as having shot, basically.
Yeah,
So you
once you
can't
shot,
use-
sorry.
you no
Yes,
longer
we
count
did
being
miss
able to
that.
shoot. Yeah.
Yeah.
which
no more
which
daisy
is
chaining per
essentially
tower, no more double, no more doing 2 actions, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, there it is. Eligible to shoot when equipped with ranged weapons, unless a rule specifically states otherwise. Units that have shot are no longer eligible to shoot until the start of the next phase. No more chaining. Yeah, no more shooting and doing actions, even though no tournament was really allowing that. Yeah.
no double
we have-
actions, like it is mentioned.
So we have this lovely MFM impact sheet that we put together. Y'all can take a look at it, run through. If you find any issues, DM me, Curie on Discord, or if you have me on Facebook, add me. I've fixed most of what has come up. And we're just going to cover, we're not going to go through every single minute detail because this is going to take, it would take forever. There's over 1,100 entries. So Space Marines as a whole. I also color coded this. You can see for the most part, Space Marines saw decreases across the board. The major impacts were to Gilliman, who went up to be the same cost as the Lion now. Sternguard veterans went up a point. Storm Speeders went up 10. And most everything else went down except for Desolation Marines are now 40 points a model. So a 5-man unit is now 200 points as opposed to 170 before. Deathwatch veterans and Terminators, Deathwing Terminators all changed by tiny amounts, but not really a huge amount. And all the Black Templar vehicles, except for the Lancers, came down. That's the biggest impact. It's a lot of internal. Oh, and of course, Land Raiders. Who can't go without Land Raiders? All of the Land Raiders went down 25 to 35 points. It is fantastic. Yes, Gladiators did go up, but that's where we're at with that.
Yeah, the Reaper went up. The main stuff for Space Marines, like by and large, Desolation Marines went down, but anything that was kind of a melee unit that you might have considered has gone down pretty decently. Vanguard veterans, Death Company with jump packs have gone down a decent chunk. Most Terminator bricks have. Everything but Deathwing Knights basically went down, giving you some pretty reasonable options there. And then a lot of the support platforms, support mechanisms as well, with things like Land Raiders. I think by and large, outside of specifically Deathwatch, who definitely copped a pretty big hit to Specialist Ammunition, and then also getting a points change on the veteran schemes themselves. Marines kind of make out like bandits here. There's some really good changes here. As long as you're happy with moving away from Desolation Marines, things like the Aggressors went down 20 points for 6, which is a really good combo with the Apothecary Biologist with Border Discipline. The Dreadnoughts all came down 20 to 25 points. I think the Ballistas at 150 is fairly interesting. The Redemptor at 210 is really interesting, given that it's still got -1 damage. Obviously, we're doing a Marine book in a couple of weeks, but we have also got another month, including LGT, of playing on this terrain on this list format. I think Marines are posed to do really well on that.
Yeah, Cameron, yes, 26 points per model. Death Company, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, Dark Angels, all of those Codex non-compliant units, they all had across the board point cuts. I think the biggest impact was Sanguinary Guard went down 8 points a model. They're now 35 points instead of the 43.
Someone said Thunderwolf Cavalry are actually decently priced now. I don't believe it, but
I'm not 100% on that. Thunderwolf Cavalry are now 90 points for 3.
So they're 30 points a model now.
Yeah,
it's not terrible in Gladius, especially. But...
yeah,
I think Land Raiders going down is the most interesting change, though. That
100%.
That Redeemer thing from WTC is like a wild reduction.
Let's use Poland. Let's use Dark Angel's list, which was the Polish Dark Angel player at WTC. His list went down, I think, 55 points.
Yeah.
Put another attack bike in there and move on.
Yeah.
Admech point drops basically across the board, except on a handful of characters.
I want to drop a hot take on the Space Marines before we move on, but sure. I don't even think that Desolator change is that big of a deal, because you are going to come out like net even or net ahead on almost any reasonable list.
Like, the main thing with Desolation Marines is that they gain so much efficiency from Border Discipline in a 10-man squad, and with stratagems and Deathwatch and things like that, a 10-man Desolation squad with Storm of Fire and Border Discipline is a whole different fruit to 2 squads of 5 Desolation Marines with one of them having that, and probably neither of them having Storm of Fire. The damage output, they're back to chip damage, at which point they're competing with Whirlwinds again, and I think Whirlwinds do the job better for 150.
So everything you said was already in my brain. I still stand by what I said. It's still a unit. When a unit is performing above its power band and it's no longer performing above its power band, it doesn't instantly become bad unit. It's just
for sure. I think you can justify running. I think you can still justify running Desolation Marines 100%. I don't think I will personally, but I don't think that there's any reason. I don't think they're bad units to run.
Yeah, I think if you ran 5, I think if you ran 5, I don't think anyone would bat their eyes at that unit. But that unit was too good, and that's demonstrably true. And now that it's no longer too good, it's just good, and you're coming out ahead. So, like Inna said, I think you guys are coming out like bandits.
Yep. All right. Admech. Yeah, point cuts across the board. The only things that didn't change were a couple of the characters, Ballistari, because they were you couldn't get any cheaper than 50 points a model for that profile. Yeah, your typical Admech list, it really depends on what you were running. The biggest impacts being here that Rangers and Vanguard are now probably aggressively costed at this point, as opposed to being fine. Rangers went down 35 points for 10, and Vanguard went down 20 points for 10, in addition to also getting buffs to their base profiles.
Yep. It's also worth remembering for everybody, Admech have a ton of rules that trigger off of being near units with the battle line keyword. For example, the breachers need to be near battle line units to get their full rerolls. There's like charge bonuses and plus advanced bonuses for infiltrators and Cerberus raiders and all that kind of thing. So having playable battle line is very important for Admech, and it seems like they've nailed it. Those units at 100, it's like 100 or 90 and 80 now, are definitely close enough to interesting that I think they're just okay units on the front. They hold pretty decent characters, like the Tech Breach Manipulus with Omni Sterilizer is still good. The boats are pretty cheap and do a lot of stuff with the Scorpius Dune Rider. Admech seem very interesting. I really like Corpus Scari Electro Priest, and they've gone down 10 points. Yeah, across the board, I think this is some great changes. Still don't run Dune Crawlers. They still seem terrible.
Yeah, I agree. And then, just
which is a shame because I own 5 of them, but
I know. I'm in a similar boat. I want D-Day to be viable again. Sisters, Adeptus Sororitas. Again, point drops across the board, with one notable exception of they got tired of people taking 3x2 Crusaders in every single list and made them 5 points more expensive for 2 of them. Aside from that, the units that were being spammed, like Sacrosands, Death Cult Assassins, Les Panthers with Seraphim and Zephyrims, those all stayed the same, and then everything else came down. Probably the most interesting change here is that Paragon Warsuits and Vol, that combination came down 50 points.
Yep. It's a sizable change.
I think Sisters list that I was looking at, they went down an average of 175 to 200 points. We'll see if it's enough. You can definitely put a lot of stuff on the board. Sisters do still struggle to kill a lot of things.
Is there any way you're still not running 2x5 Crusaders or 3x2 Crusaders? Sorry,
you're still running 3x2 Crusaders. You're just paying 15 more points for the privilege of it.
Just wanted to check. I can't believe the Exorcist went down. That feels insulting, but whatever.
Yeah, because I mean, the Exorcist did comp a nerf during the indirect and towering update, so they just decided to punt it back down. Castigators at 140 are ridiculous. Like, that's actually a really good price for that profile. But yeah, aside from that, all good. Guard, this is actually a bit of a mixed bag.
This one makes me sad deep inside.
This one actually makes me really happy, but that's just because of how they made it. This is because of how they made their changes, because the type of stuff that Guard was taking a lot of, and you'll see the reds in here, are all of the indirect platforms. All the indirect platforms that were being spammed went up. Infantry across the board went down. Lehman Russes across the board went down, and almost all of the super heavies went down. Like a Baneblade is now 480 points from 540. That's a massive change.
I think I just want to contextualize my disappointment. Sorry, Tim. Is that the detachment rule with all these increases to indirect fire basically is like meaningless. Like, why even have a detachment rule?
I know. The detachment rule is the main problem with that with Guard in the first place, where you get lethal hits if you stand still. So
this emphasizes the problem by buffing units that move to do things.
Yeah.
So like
it's a bit of a nombo. It kind of sucks.
On the other hand, though, there's a ton of units that were already fairly playable, like Bulgrin and God's Ghost, that are aggressive push units that got points decreases, which does encourage
want to point this out. Stuff. You can put a Catachan Jungle Fighter squad in a Chimera for 125 points.
Yep,
it's pretty good.
Like that. The biggest
God's Ghost in your bonus deployment zone for 100.
I think the funniest thing is, and yes, absolutely acknowledging the rule where you have to stand still to get your full benefits, though. But every single Guard player I talked to, when indirect was good, they would, like, as they were sitting there tabling me from behind a wall, they're like, oh, the army, I wish it wasn't like this. It really should be about like tanks and infantry and stuff like that. That's the theme of the army, but it is what it is. I don't like it. And then this morning, every single Guard player I knew was only talking about the hikes to the indirect. They weren't talking about the cuts to the tanks at all. So I'm trying to figure out like what the disconnect there was. Like, what's
Look,
happening?
man,
Like, should be happy, right? They should be happy.
I should preface that I am happy with the cuts that were received and the ability to play something that's not massive parking lots of artillery. I'm just disappointed at the same time that the entire Army's detachment rule is designed around artillery and that it's not useful, really. But I'm really happy with the ability to now maybe just pretend to be orcs and fill chimeras with infantry and then just sashay across the board with 6
You
chimeras
can just
full of
activation
infantry.
lock the ever-loving hell out of people
Yes.
with infinitely respawning.
That's what I'm going to do, and it will make me happy. It just
Demo
makes me
Russes-
sassy.
Demo Russes and Dorns are still terrifying, and you can't convince me otherwise. So
Also, all of the Baneblade chassis going down does make me a little amused.
The
'Cause they
Baneblades
were
not being
kinda
able to
like
Overwatch
in
means
the
they probably
periphery.
deserve that change.
Yes, they do. They're also
Yeah.
almost impossible to move on reasonable terrain sets.
Weiss Raven makes a good point. They're wondering if side grading a 40% army is going to help it not struggle. I think with the amount, and we'll see as we go through the other armies, with the amount that they've taken off of those top armies, that could actually push them fairly high.
Yeah, you also have to be careful with an army like Guard or Admech that if you make them too good, like with buffs at this stage, and also nerf everyone else, they are armies that have a very oppressive play pattern. If Guard are good, you're just getting shot to death, right? You got to be careful with not making that too
No
good.
one wants the return of
But
Leaf Blower.
You can definitely say that if they didn't cut like the points out of Tau like into the ground. Like
I know,
they
but I'm mad about Tau for different reasons.
Now we're gonna be insane.
Well, let's continue to let's just skip Imperial Knights because they just nerfed them out of contention. Just
Yeah. And really the changes are very small. All your armigers are 150 points now, and Canister X went down 30 points.
probably
Moving along.
Can I quickly say something here?
You can say whatever. You have the floor. You are going to get the closing word on Imperial Knights. You tell everyone on the internet how they should feel about Imperial Knights right now.
So, like, here's an example where a core rule change did, in fact, nerf the army in a way that you had to be conscientious of, right? Like, towering, big deal. Dev wounds, big deal. Lack of access to Overwatch, big deal. Cool. That same logic should have been applied to Eldar, where they said, hey, maybe these core rule changes are actually not enough to bring this faction down from the play experience that we're like upset about. Maybe we need to do a little bit more. That happened to Imperial Knights and did not happen to Eldar. And for that, I'm upset. I'm upsetty.
Yeah, I think they should have gone further on Knights as well. Anyway, moving on. Jeremy, you're. Oh, can I?
Cliff,
I'm unmuted now.
Go talk about Custodian.
Nice.
Go talk about
Everybody was
Custodian.
muted. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I was also muted and forgot, and I was like, yeah, Cliff, go talk about Custodes. Give us the lowdown.
Custodians problem units went up in cost. The biggest hitter, like the fact that you can't take 10-man Custodian Guard bricks anymore, which led to, I think, like, as a Custodes fanboy, it's like a play style that was very effective, but also very oppressive and like not really aligned with how ideally I think that army should operate, which is like MSU, very effective in small units, with like lots of tactical flexibility with your like squads of little dudes.
Yep.
The point costs alongside some of the strat changes make it like more interesting, but they're still like they're going to kick butt in close combat. Having access to fight first on demand is still cool. Throwing Trajan in for a secondary fight first once a game is still really good. I think they're in still like a pretty good spot. I think they suffer a lot on the durability side due to the devastating wounds change. Where, like, for example, the Eldar matchup becomes somehow worse for them as a result of a lack of access to a Feel No Pain. But yeah, I think overall, like, I'm still going to bring them to the table. They're going to be fun. And, hype about some of the sisters point changes that help make up for that Exaction Squad point increase.
Yeah. And I'll also add to this one of the things that we saw. So we saw impact, increases across the board for everything that was taken a lot, but the stuff that wasn't being taken went down for a large part. Like
a lot of that stuff is still very expensive, but the
Yes.
Land Raider looks cheap. The Sagatarum especially look a little bit pushed. But some of the other Forge World infantry are still very expensive.
Minotaur,
Yes.
you're disgusting. It's nearly 70 points a model. Yeah, it's way too much.
Yeah.
Still too bad.
They're definitely paying for the sins of previous editions.
Yep.
Vigilators and Witch Seekers, though, at 50 points is actually really big in context of the Agents of the Imperium changes.
Yeah, they're definitely a lot better than Voidsman at Arms are, which would be the next agent's inclusion.
Yep. Agamatis are still way too expensive, but that's just life.
For sure.
Same
with
with Aquilons.
Jetbike still.
And Polaris weirdly still go to 6. They're the only unit that goes to 6 now in Custodes.
It's because they come in boxes of 3.
I know,
you can
it's
do 2
just-
boxes.
You can still do big squads of Alaris. You can do 5 Alaris with a captain and a land raider for like basically the same points as now, and that's a pretty good unit.
Yeah.
I think there's still a lot of design specific Custodes. I think they're gonna be still pretty good.
Yeah, same.
Let's make people sad. Eldari.
It didn't do enough. But it's weird because Dark Reapers somehow copped to 5 points.
Why did Dark Reapers get like why?
This
I'm
one
just-
did make me laugh when I was
I'm
going through the
just-
numbers. I was like,
it
wait,
was
is
like-
that right? No, they went up a
There
point.
was
all.
like one random like London Open event where like every single player brought like 3 squads of 3 Dark Reapers to try and counter Gene Circles, and they all got smashed.
The rest
Like,
of this is
That's
just
the only time I've ever seen them on the table.
the rest of this is just nonsense. Like, I'm glad that they increased the Incarn by 80 points. That's like the highlight reel thing, is like the Incarn went up the most of any single model in this balance slate, going up 80 points for the model, which is deserved and maybe still not enough. Yeah,
You'll
and then
still
there's
see
a
it in
bunch of
almost every
stuff.
Eldari list.
And then there's a bunch of stuff that just got missed that people were starting to take in lists. Like I think Fuegan, I don't know. how you
Fuegan
pronounce
is
it.
fine at one. He's like expensive.
He's
as is.
expensive.
At 115,
So
he's
I don't
probably
think-
fine because you also need to run with Fire Dragons, which are probably still fine.
You
at
100% don't.
85.
You
You
do
100%
not.
don't.
No,
Oh, right, because he gets the loan up.
No, he's not a load up. He's just running about with a 2-up armor saving a 5 on a 5.
And he comes back when he dies.
Oh, that's right.
I think yeah, a lot of the Phoenix Lords you haven't seen yet. I think people are going to experiment with. I also think people are going to start experimenting with solitaires.
Yeah, they didn't go up. They're 115 points, right? Still, they didn't
Yeah.
go
Well,
anywhere.
they're very good for plucking out of characters out of Necron Warrior bricks.
Yes.
If you had printed the Incarn at 350, it would be getting the same nerf now. It would
Yeah,
be going
probably
up
430.
8. Yep.
Yeah, it's still amazingly good. The 10-point tap to Night Spitters is probably not enough considering how good that unit
Insulting,
still
yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I think Fire Prisms go up just like they went up 30, which is actually reasonable, but they probably could have gone up more.
Remember that
Um,
unit
But
debuted
I
at
think 180 is
125,
getting
guys.
close to where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Do you all think that Wraith Knights drop out of competitive lists more so?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you just take
There's
double
already
steps.
double Wraith Guard time, right?
I think you'll still
No.
see him.
You'll
I
still
think
see
so.
Wraith Knights.
I think you'll see one unit of Wraith Guard. You won't go double Wraith Guard anymore.
I think people are
I
just going
think-
to take Spectres and... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tim, actually.
Oh no, yeah, I was agreeing with you. I think Spectres will be. You'll see more Spectres. I think you won't see Wraith Knight in every list, but I don't think you'll blink or do a double take when you see it in some lists.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You
I
just
think
won't see
if-
two
I
or
think the
three.
Wraith Knight becomes the domain of the 4-1 Eldar list.
I think you end up just taking like double Night Spinner, some
Yep.
Fire Prisms, Shadow Specters, Warp Spiders, and character panoply, right? Essentially, and a Yinkarn.
Fire
Your
Prism
list.
randomly get.
You
Go
take
ahead,
3
Tim.
Ravagers and
No, I'm done interrupting. I'm muting my mic.
No, you're good actually, Tim. It's because there's so many of us that it's hard to manage it. So I want you to talk more than I want to talk. Ravagers.
I was just saying that the Night Spinner is now randomly better into Custodes than it was before, and it was already very good in Custodes.
Yes.
That's the true nerf for Custodes, is the way that they cop it from the devastating list change from so many different units. It's just like, oof.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
actually better now for Warp Spider. Somebody in chat pointed it out. Like
Yeah.
if you put that unit in with just devastating wounds, it just bypasses armor saves instead of people being able to take feel no pain. So it's just good into random.
Well, they can take
nonsense.
regular Feel No Pains. They just can't take mortal wounds.
Yeah, the mortal wound one. So it's good though into multiple units just because of that.
There's not a ton out there that has a specific Mortal Wound Feel No Pain, though, right? So
Watcher in the Dark.
yeah, I mean it's like Watcher in the Dark, the Norn Emissary, and
Custodian.
then like the Lion and Custodes, right? Like it's a few things, but it's not a ton.
Yeah.
There's other people had triggerables to help defend them against dev wounds, I think, right?
It was less. It wasn't it wasn't that common.
It's not as common in this edition.
But most of the conditional Feel the Pains were mortal wounds, unless it was against psychic. All right. Enough with Eldari. They didn't go far enough, but they at least hit the worst offenders. Not hard enough, but they hit.
Yeah, I think this puts Eldar into the place where if you are better than the Eldar player, you will probably beat them now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chaos
Still an S
Demons.
tier. Go ahead.
Timmy, how do you feel about your boys?
Okay. Side grade. I think so a lot of the Nurgle and the Slanesh stuff went down in points, which it need. I don't think it went far enough. Yeah, the great and clean one, basically, he went down randomly, and he was already, you were seeing him in some lists. He was decent tech to just kind of like push into the center, and it was nice because he was so hard to kill, but he was not very threatening that people would just kind of be forced to ignore him or play around him, and it helped really trigger Shadow in No Man's Land, which meant that if you randomly lost Be'lakor, all your army rules didn't turn off. It was also really good for just doing homers in the center over and over again. Now, basically, he gets
non-zero 3-inch deep strike on my opponent's home objective. Just be like, here, deal with this guy.
That's hilarious. So now he basically gets the upgrade for the Film of Pain, which you were basically was mandatory on him. You're getting it for free. Flamers up a little bit, which is not really a surprise. That was probably a little too good. Fiends went down, but I don't think they went down hard enough. But they're beasts, so they can go through walls. You can start them on the board. I'm very happy with the cuts to Demonettes and to Bloodletters. Those were too expensive. I was a little surprised that the Bloodthirster going up. Be'lakor.
Yeah, I was not impressed with that guy.
Be'lakor, you still take him. Shalaxi, you still probably take her. Lord of Change, not really surprised to see that guy go up. I think now the people that are running 3 Lords of Change and Kairos, I think their list got better because that list sucked, and now they dropped the 2 Lords of Change that don't have the enhancement. And Changeling, I think you still probably run him. Maybe I think Scribes. There's argument for Scribes being
I think
a side
you
grade.
start with Scribes, and then if you start with Scribes and maybe the Mask, and then if you have the points, you maybe push it.
Yeah, I do like the Mask a lot. I'm happy to see how much did she go down by. I don't have it pulled.
Nothing. She stayed the same, sadly.
That's unfortunately. I think she's a little too expensive, but depending how the lists go into her buff, where she just hits something and makes it -1 to wound, is situationally strong. So I think people could play with her. All in all, I think this is mostly a side grade for demons.
Which I think is fine, because demons were sitting like a 50% win rate already, and they didn't need buffs because everything else is getting hit above them, right? So you don't want to put a point where demons are. You want to kind of adjust the internal balance on demons, not push them up because they're fine.
Yeah,
right?
To be clear, this is a side grade in a vacuum. So in the ecosystem, this might end up being a slight uptick.
Yep, Nurglings at 35 points for 3 is very funny.
Yep. 2.9 points per wound now for Nurglings.
Pretty good.
All right, CK.
I would say small to medium win. A lot of the stuff that was immediately and above them went down. I think I would have said that it would have been a side grade because their best data sheet went up by 10 points, but the carnivores went down by 20 points. And carnivores felt very good in literally every matchup except for Custodes. And Custodes, they honestly kind of felt worse than just taking more thermal spears. So now that that's an option, it feels good. The biggest one, I know Gabe C from the Discord is very excited about, so am I, is the Rampager is now down 15 points. It was already kind of cheap before. I think they finally crossed the threshold where it's pushed. It's now clocks in at 380. It's good because you can now you can threaten a Rampager that can't get shot and then can advance and charge through a wall and then take shock with 22 dice and then start swinging with exploding 6s. It also, if you're now running carnivores, you can long leash and basically give 3 carnivores a turn, reroll 1s to hit in close combat before you commit the Rampager in if you decide to go with carnivores first. Brigands, you probably still take 5 to 6 at 160. What really kind of hurt was when you're filling out the other data sheets, the Stalkers, the Huntsmen, and they went up to 150, which is not great. The Executioner, which was already kind of trash at 135, somehow got worse now that it's 150 and you already didn't really want to take it because there's so much terrain on the tables. You can't really leverage its range, and it's AP1. So the best you're doing is turning off cover. You're doing nothing into 2-up armor saves. So you're still not going to see that. And then, like I said, the scribes, Nurglings got cheaper. Scribes stayed the same. So if you want to take, if you want to fill, like, if you have 100 points left, you want to fill that out with the Nurgling unit and the scribes, that plugs in perfectly. So I think CK, and the Battle Shock change, specifically the stratagem, once per game, and now you have to use it before you roll.
That's a
big change. With damage going down across the game, you're going to see more of those games kind of grind out to round 3, 4, and 5, and it actually starts that army rule will actually start coming into effect now.
Yep. You can't fit 14 dogs now is the other main thing, right? Like that's just not a list that you can really run anymore.
No, that list went up 160 points, so you are just flat out a dog, maybe 2.
Yep. All right, CSM. I would say broadly good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think CSM made up pretty well.
Yeah, like the only things that they got increases on were Obliterators, Rubric Marines, but that was a side nerf, the Forge Fiend, and Abaddon. Everything else either went down or stayed the same. And CSM were just on that cusp of being really good. That they did eat the nerf in that they can't double Nurgle strat anymore because it is not a battle tactic. The only battle tactic that they have is Profane Zeal, which is the full
I
rerolls.
really don't feel like that's a nerf. What were you ever double Nurgle stratting?
I'm saying as an availability, if you wanted to do it.
Sure. If you were playing a list that didn't exist, then your list is worse now. Yep.
I've seen that list in the wild, but also
I have seen it in the wild. Like I read every CSM list every week. But yeah.
As soon as that list runs into someone that like knows the order of operations and they target the Chaos Lord list unit first, it just stopped working.
Yeah.
But I think if you're running Anthony's list, I think now you just cut Cypher because he's a little bit too expensive and his Vect is broadly less useful. Yep. And you cut that, and then you change one unit of Obliterators. You change their undivided mark to now probably Nurgle to help with Necrons. And I think that comes out as a wash on points.
Probably.
Anthony and I were talking about a little bit before. That's probably pretty close to where you land.
Yeah, I think a lot of Vect units are going to get pulled out of armies now, just because Vect is so narrow. Like the Calidus Assassin's Vect is pretty narrow. You might still keep her because of the redeploy stuff that she can do. And she does go down in points. She does go down quite substantially in points.
Ennis?
Anybody who's thinking about that, like sort of the Vect nerf, command reroll is still a battle tactic, so there is always something that you can hit in almost any army you're playing against.
It just
so
means
if you want that unit for its own merits, it's still fine. And there is always going to be something you can hit because command reroll is right there.
Yep. All right. Death God.
Okay.
Ennis was leading the meta with his run this weekend.
For 2 minutes. All right. Death Guard. I'm really upset because all the stuff that got better in Death Guard is stuff that I don't own. I own everything in this army except Plague Marines. I have Bolter Plague Marines, and that's it. Broadly, I think every unit in the army except the Miasmic Malignifier and the Predator Annihilator went down somewhere from 5 to 35 points. 45 in the case of Mortarion, and the Plague Sergeant, who was already terrible. So we saw points drops to the Rhino, the Land Raider. Plague Marines went down 4 points a model. The character that leads them all went down 5 mostly. Mortarion went down 45, and it was already an auto take. Poxwalkers went down 10. Typhus went down 15. The list that I took to my event last weekend went down 195 points, and it didn't have any Plague Marines in it. It very easily would have gone down more if I'd had any of those. The extra ability is very good for giving you, so it's either -1 save, -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill, or -1 leadership and OC. Probably you can write off the third one. It's fairly situational. Plague Marine is already OC2, and then it caps at minimum 1 anyway, so I wouldn't generally worry about that one. But defensively, the -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill is great. There are a ton of units with access to -1 to hit, and you can stack that and then to have -1 to hit and -1 ballistic skill, which means Marines are hitting you on 5 suddenly. A guards unit's hitting you on 6s. It's super great. Very, very useful. Then the -1 save. One of the biggest issues with that unit with the army is a generally fairly low AP. There's a +1 AP stratagem, which is an additional +1 if they're on an effective objective and you roll a critical wound. Don't worry about that. It's +1 AP. So there's a +1 AP stratagem, and now everything is going to be -1 save, which means that baseline, you can have a unit of like Terminators hitting at functionally AP4. Like there's a lot of capacity to get really, really high AP. And one of the biggest issues with melee this edition is the generally low strength of melee weapons. Well, Death Guard do have a -1 toughness aura that means that a lot of things you are wounding them on 3s, potentially reroll 1s from Mortarion, and there's a lot of capacity to get a lot of damage through from fairly small units that aren't that expensive. Like a Plague Marine squad can run something like 80 points with a character that gives them crit hits on 5s and lethal hits, and then they get 2 plasma guns, a blight launcher, so that's a bunch of damage to shooting, and then also like 3 heavy plague weapons for 9 attacks at 6/2/2 lethal hits, which is then effectively 6/3/2 lethal hits. Like that's a decent amount of damage for an 80-point squad with OC2 that can go in a Rhino. You can 2 squads in a Rhino with a character. Lots of little capacity for getting some really good like activation count out of this army. You can put, it's sub 700 points for 30 Plague Marines and 3 Rhinos. I think it's 235. I think it's like 710 points or something stupid like that, which you can then run alongside Mortarion and a shooting battery. You can run Terminators. Typhus is still amazing. He get a lot of the problems that are solved by just giving all that stuff an extra AP in combat. Plus the shooting, there's a ton of AP2 and AP1 shooting with Ignore Cover in this army, from Plague Spitters, whether that's on the Bloat Drones, on the you can put them on the side weapons, Plague Crawlers. You can have Plague Spewers in your Plague Marine squads if you want to sacrifice some of the shooting. You can there's lots of decent strength anti-infantry 2+ with fairly low AP shooting. And when you suddenly push that up to AP1 to AP2, AP2 to AP3, it's a big breakpoint into a ton of the game right now. And I think it's really, really well positioned for Death Guard to have that kind of slow, inexorable wall that when it gets to you, you feel punished, but you've got time to stop it, right? And I don't think Death Guard are going to be world beaters off of this. I definitely think they're going to sort of settle somewhere into the middle of the pack. But that's a huge increase from where they were, which was literally half the win rate of Eldar. I think this seems like a really cool army. I think there's a lot of really cool stuff here. The characters were all great. The Contagion, they now actually have a detachment rule. It was just sticky objectives before. I'm really hyped for Death Guard. They're definitely something that I'll be cracking up for RTTs. I'm not sure I'm going to take them to LGT or anything like that, but this is a really cool army, and I think anybody who plays Death Guard should be super excited. Anybody who's feeling down on their current army and you have a Death Guard army, give it a look. It's super interesting.
Yep, the Knight of the Fallen points out that Hellbrutes put contagions on units, which for the -1 Bliss Seal weapon skill, or even just extra.
If you want to run a Land Speeder Hail Strike that costs more and moves slower, please be my guest. Space Marine players already aren't running them, and they're better than Death Guard are. You don't need a worse version of that.
All right, Drukari.
It's fine. They got points decreases on a bunch of stuff, so you can take more stuff with your Void Ravens, which is kind of the list that I've seen people playing recently, is just plain spam, which is fine.
The Void Raven was... Go ahead.
You can fit more stuff. Scourges went down, which makes no sense to me in my brain. 10 points less for Scourges.
10-man went up.
The 10-man went up, but you were never you weren't taking 10-mans. You were always taking 5-mans because you didn't get more weapons when you ran a 10-man. So you're running you got points back on Scourges. There's cool stuff in here, like Lilith going down 20 points, I think is really interesting because she already was kind of close to being well costed as far as a combat unit went. But the power in the Drukari list is not combat right now. It's just in dark light weapons. So the fact that you get
there and Lilith and have some decent combat.
Yeah, you can do those things, and you can epic challenge out freaking Necron characters and bricks to try to take them down. But you can take more dark light weapons. You can take more mission play units now because they all got points cost essentially. So you're just going to have your planes plus more stuff, which is fine. I don't think it's enough to bring the army out of kind of where it's sitting right now, which is that only Skari can win with it.
Love you, Skari.
These are fine buffs, but they needed more stuff. Somewhere. But part of that's just the problem with the addition being terrible for combat units, and that anything that does combat in the Drukari army just isn't durable enough to get there.
Yep.
I can't believe that witches caught a 20-point nerf, and I still think they're 20 points too expensive.
Yep, they're still too expensive.
Do you think that are there any knock-on effects from these points changes for Inari?
Well, Ravagers got 20 points more expensive, so you're not going to take 3 of them in Eldari anymore.
You're still going to take you still will take 3 Ravagers in Inari.
If you're paying the brain tax, you will bring 3. You will still bring 3.
Yeah. And you'll bring Scourge, maybe. I don't know if you can bring Scourges actually in Inari.
Yeah, you can.
Then you'll probably take those, and you got some of your discount there.
Yeah, that's true.
And
yeah, I've definitely already seen some lists with 3 Ravagers, 3. It's 3 Ravagers, 3 Scourges, 2 Fire Prisms, 2 Night Spinners, Yvrain, Yunkarn, and then some Spectres and Spiders, and that still fits in 2K pretty easily.
And it's very good. It looks real good. Hull spam plus stuff.
Alrighty. Gene Stealer cults. Pretty much what we
Okay.
expected to see.
I think this was the right nerf, and this is the scale of nerf we should have seen for Eldar in capacity. So the hit on cult ambush tokens is tough, right? It's a thing that you're going to have to deal with. You're no longer going to have infinite recursion for all your units. However, it never really came up. It was a thing your opponent had to play around. It's still a thing your opponent had to play around. And you assumed that you were never going to get anything back, because if you were getting stuff back, you were probably winning the game anyway. So that change doesn't really matter. And the points changes are all very manageable. Broadly, cut a squad of acolytes from your list. You can't double 3-inch deep strike them anyway. You can't double +1/+1 skill them anyway. So you don't need all those squads anymore. Cut one of your Nexuses, and you easily swallow all these point changes, and your list is still insanely high damage. You still have a very good stratagem in the loan up stratagem. You can probably cut Meticulous Planner now to give you back 40 more points. There's maybe an argument for running like a couple of 5s of pure strains if you're not running aberrants to just have some forward pressure. Like, nothing here seems bad. Cults are still going to be a very high damaging army that has punishing play patterns if you don't deal with it well. 3-inch deep strike is still an incredible gameplay piece. Aberrants are still very resilient and very good at taking the mid board. And with Devastating Wounds no longer spilling and them having a native Feel No Pain, they're suddenly much better to Devastating Wounds. You're not going to get them picked up by a Wraith Knight anymore randomly and lose that matchup. So, I don't know. I feel like Gene Circles are fine. I definitely think they settle somewhere into like the upper half of the armies and sort of like that top 10. And where they'll fall will depend on how good you are as a player. One last thing I'll say, if Gene Circles fall out of being the second best army in the game, they will probably be better than they should be, because if they fall down to where they should be like the 6th or 7th or 8th best army, they'll punch up above that, because people will stop doing the things they're doing now, which is teching for Gene Circles, because you have to, because they're the second best army in the game and you're expecting to play them a bunch of tournaments. Once that falls off a little bit, you stop seeing people bringing all of the defensive teching to Gene Circles. You start seeing Space Marine players get greedy on infiltrators again, and the Clamavus might still go away in the mirror, or they'll not run the 12-inch deep strike relic or the unit that just happens to have that. They sit in the backfield, and once that starts falling away, Gene Circles just kind of chip away a little bit here and there at that meta representation and punch a little bit above their weight. So I think don't overreact. Gene Circles are fine, but they are a little bit weaker than they were, and that's fine because they were completely screwed before.
Yep. Grey Knights. Jesus.
Big points discounts.
Massive point discounts across the board.
Discount day on.
Was Purgation Squad the biggest decrease of anything in the game? I think it was.
On a point per model basis, yes. Like for like regular squads, because obviously there were some that went down a lot, but they were like big units.
Went down 45, but yeah.
Yeah, like the Baneblade went down 60. But yeah, for like this is a massive change. They had copped a nerf in the indirect, and now they got back their points. Yeah, just massive point drops across the thing. The only things that didn't go down were the Flyers, the Venerable Dreadnought, the Servitors, and the Land Raider Banisher. But all the other Land Raiders went down by a similar amount.
Banishers still have rules? Jesus.
It's still made by Forge World, apparently.
Did not think they still sold that.
Neither did I. I was surprised. But yeah, you get a ton of stuff. Terminators, probably you gained the least out of them. But that's because that's where the good builds that you were seeing were running them.
Yeah.
And they still went down.
You're going to cop like 100 points of changes here, which is probably enough that once you cut that exaction squad that you can't run anymore anyway, you can fit in like a strike squad or something like that from like Jack Officer's list. It's basically what you're looking at. And it doesn't change a ton for the list. It loses a little bit. I think your Grey Knights broadly stay the same, which is probably fine because that rule set, like they're going to get a little bit better, but that rule set is one of those ones that becomes oppressive real quick if it's good. Like it's so much teleportation and movement, and I almost don't want it to be a top level army because trying to deal with that for the average player and trying to play that as the average player is miserable. So
correct. All right. Leagues. Well, we already talked about the rule change being massive, and then they got point cuts on the 17 to 20% range, depending on the unit. Some of these things are now hilariously cheap. 3 Thunderkin for 75 points. The Land Fortress at 225 is definitely a mood when you looked at what it was last edition, but obviously it's not last edition's data sheet anymore. And then Sagittar at 100 points feels real good.
Yeah.
That data sheet's actually really good.
Sagittar like a top 10 game data sheet, frankly. But
yeah. And you can actually, put cheaper stuff in them now, so it's more worthwhile. Like I wrote a list earlier that had 6 Sagittars, 30 Warriors, 12 or 18 Thunderkin and support characters, and 10 Hearthguard. And I was just like, how do I get so much shit in here? Oliver Johnson's list that went 6-2 at TNA Open this weekend. You can add 2 full Sagittars with Hearthkin and still have points left over.
That's one squad
yeah.
of hearts because it splits into two for anybody who's
Yes.
not following the map
Yes,
on
yes.
that one. Yeah, so that's like 300 points a gained, basically.
I think that's going to be really good for them. Necrons, internal rebalance would be the best answer for this one.
It's our thick city of 10th edition.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
my
much
opinion.
so.
They thick citied Necrons
Yeah.
into second place.
Yeah, apparently Illuminor Xeris and Necron Warriors both needed to go down.
Saros was expensive at 220, but man, that guy has a lot of rules on that data
And
sheet.
that's the thing. He wasn't expensive at 220. He was probably perfectly fine. Yeah, like the Lich Guard build got hit. Crypto Thralls went up 20 for 2. Your excuse me. Your Lich Guard themselves went up 20 points for 5. So that right there went up by 60 points per brick. So the list on its own went up 120. If you were running DDAs, which you usually were, then you went up another 75 points. Like the list went up almost 200 points, more than that actually, more than 200 points for what we were seeing in your typical like double Lich Guard brick build. But you can just pivot. You pivot to Warriors, which are now 11 points a model.
Which is probably fine in a vacuum, but
with the Dev Wound change no longer spilling, your Warriors are now even harder to kill. Some armies will have the volume to deal with it. Some armies will not.
Yeah. People are a little worried about Necrons. I think it remains to be seen. I definitely think people... I know things like Liam Hackett's list from WTC is what people are worrying about, which is just the 2 squads of Necron Warriors that just choke you forever. Mm-hmm. I think that list had a very specific thing of the meta was not expecting it and did not have a plan to deal with it. Give people some time to play into that. You can build... There are a lot of armies that can bring enough blast weapons to deal with that. There are armies that can't, and you'll have to work around that, but... You know, like a big squad of Alaris with all the grenades and things like that can definitely shoot through some volume of that squad and shooting it because it has characters in it. And, you know, if you're just trying to kill it with Custodian Guard on that aren't controlling an objective, yeah, sorry, man, tough shit. But, you know, there are ways and means.
Is that Overlords copped a nerf because they can no longer use the reanimation, the Protocol of the Undying Legions, I think it is, for free anymore, or a second time. So they're limited to just a single activation in the shooting and a single activation in the fight phase.
How many points is Nightbringer now as well? Sorry.
Nightbringer didn't change as far as I know.
Transcendent Catan went up 30, I want to say, or 40.
Transcendent went up 20.
Tesseract Vault's going down 50 and the Silent King going down 50 are both kind of interesting to me, along with... I'm sure, Cliff, you're excited about monoliths getting...
Oh, yeah. Big point time is like on the table for Necrons, which is amazing.
Yeah, you can fit a whole lot of big boys on the table for Necrons now. Yeah, I guess I am missing Nightbringer from here. Oh, no, Shard of the Nightbringer. There he is. 255. Yeah, none of the named Catans changed.
You probably just take Nightbringer now then instead of Transcendent. Maybe you still take the Transcendent.
The Transcendent went up 20, but with the Feel No Pain, he is so good.
Do both.
You could do both.
Yeah. All right, Orcs. Orcs is a similar army to Marines in that they saw mostly decreases, but a few increases to units that were just being taken too much. The most notable ones here were the Beast Boss went up 20 points, which is fine. Big Mechs all went down. A bunch of your name characters went down. Just decreases across the board. Mech Guns went up 10 points a model. Trucks went to 60 points, which is probably where they should be at. And of course, Ben Jurek points out that the big track went up 15 points.
Gaunt's Ghost went down 15, bro. It's fine.
Yeah. You can go kill all the characters you want, Ben. All right, but yeah, that's Orcs. I think they're going to be fine after this. They were one of those armies that was just on the edge, and with a lot of the changes that you're seeing right now, that activation locking style build that was run at the WTC still works really well.
There is an error on this.
Just going to be our buzzword of the edition at this point.
There's an error
on that last one, but yeah.
There's an error on the orc sheet, though. Mega Knobs are min squad size of 2, not 3, so they are 30 points a model, not 20.
Tim, were you talking earlier about like orc potential to just swamp the board? Well,
I mean, it's still there.
Like it's still here, and like perhaps even like increase.
I mean, their biggest natural predator, I'd argue, was Custodes, and that Custodes are still good, but they have now hit that critical mass if they just don't immediately shut you out. So I think orcs are very poised to be better than people think they're going to be.
I feel that way about.
I think
Tau.
people should be. I think people should be nervous about orcs.
I'm always
But-
nervous about orcs. I live near Brian.
Don't worry, he'll keep playing Eldari. You'll be fine.
Can we just not talk about how Tau make me incredibly unhappy?
look at
Look,
all
remember
the
how we were
green.
talking about
Look at all the
unhealthy-
green.
unhealthy
They are
play patterns
coming,
getting
man.
buffed?
Yeah. Talk about
Uh,
buffing a faction
Ugh.
that didn't need points decreases this much in an army that was probably actually good in
It's
secret.
fine.
This is bad, but we'll
So
see how this works
hard.
out.
The 5 points on crisis suits I genuinely don't care about. It's 55 fucking points on a Riptide.
On Riptides, yeah.
You can run from it, but you can't hide from it. The Triptide comes
Riptide
for
always
all.
arrives.
Triptide, every single edition.
Ghost
It has,
Kills
it has to go
Literally.
back.
The
Going all
perplexity for me really is Ghost Kills, which were great, I thought, at 170. Like super durable loan op. That's just a problem to deal with. And you're just like, make
Wait,
it
wrong one.
like what? How?
That one.
Gosh.
Yeah, the daisy chaining being gone
Right.
is a meaningful change.
God damn it.
Jelly hosing, you can't talk idiots into letting you daisy chain it anymore. So
Now, can we talk about the Storm Surge as well? Like
400 points for the
400,
Storm
that's a
Surge is
shit.
real fun.
It's very good.
You can fit triple Surge, Triptide, and a Crisis Brick now.
There's so many. Yeah, you can just literally toughness somebody with that.
Yeah.
Also, I think
crisis
Cliff,
suits aren't
you
that
make
tough,
a
but
really
yeah.
good point. That the decrease on the stealth suit, not stealth suits, the
Ghost Kill.
ghost kills is actually ghost kills were already good with loan op.
So
They're
good.
just better now because they got points decreases. The amount of points decreases on Tau is a problem,
Let's stop
and I
being
don't
mad
think
about
they're
that.
going to realize it until later. Maybe I'm wrong. Look, if I'm wrong, I will figure out a tattoo bet for Tau. Okay,
I will. You
If
will
I'm wrong,
You will
I'll
eat
figure
one
it out.
resin. You will eat one resin stealth suit.
No, I don't need
Yeah.
cancer. I
Good
don't. Need, I don't need cancer.
No. We will-
I
We
will
will
get a
take-
shield drone tattooed somewhere. There you go.
No. We will take one, we will mold it, and then we will make candy in the shape of it, and you'll have to eat those on air.
Oh, that's
Oh
good.
God.
Like
I was
that.
gonna do
Or-
a
That
shield
sounds
drone
expensive.
tattoo.
Can we make him get a tattoo instead?
Yeah, that's
One
fair.
second.
All right, 1,000 suns.
Oh, poor Thousand Sons, man. This army definitely got the hardest nerf of any of the armies in like the top 5.
Yeah, you can't indirect for free anymore because that's a 2 CP strat and it's not battle tactic. You can't blank damage twice anymore because it's not a battle tactic. You can reroll all hits and wounds with psychic weapons, and that's it.
Yeah, which is still good because that's definitely one that you want to be able to use twice. So I think it's fine.
100%.
And it makes more sense as a Kabbalistic ritual of being like, hey, Kabbalistic ritual, my friends give me power rather than my friends let me see further. Like, I don't know. I like the idea, the lore behind it a little better. It definitely helps balance the army a little bit more because you know, if you're playing against Thousand Sons and they go first, they cannot use the indirect stratagem against you now, right? That's the biggest immediate change. Is that there's no way. And that, honestly, for me alone, that would have been enough with like a points hit on Magnus and Vortex Beasts, and I would have been happy there. And then all the other points changes happened.
Every single character went up. Rubrics went up. Terminators went up.
Changeling went up.
The footprints went down 30.
Woohoo.
Looking at you, TJ. But the Demon Prince
Three
with
of
wings,
those,
of
huh?
course, had to go up 5 points. The Mauler Fiend apparently was too cheap. It needed to go up 15 points. And then same with the Predators. I'm sorry, Nick, but you brought this upon yourself
Well,
by
obviously,
doing too
when
well
they
with
can
one.
double move, they have to be more expensive, right?
Sure, but were they already fine cost-wise?
Probably.
Yeah,
When's that ever mattered to GW?
that's true. But they did make the Vindicator 10 points cheaper, so yay. And Zangors are unchanged.
Double moving Vindicator, let's go.
I hear
Yeah.
I hear you can table Wraith Knights with Enlightened and Zangor, so
All right, so that's Thousand Suns. They're definitely they probably copped the worst of it of the armies that didn't really
again
need
though,
that much
I
of an
think
input.
T-Suns will be fine. T-Suns have a very, very powerful base rule set. Magnus is still great, plus 1 to hit and wound is incredible aura. They're just a little more fair about how they deal damage now. And that's not a bad thing for everyone else in the meta. I think T-Suns will still be fairly decent.
Yep. Tyranids.
Making me sad before the
I
book's
think,
even
I
out.
think this makes 3 of the 5 people on here
So-
just sad.
I genuinely don't care about almost anything that's here because what you have here, right, is compared to the current codex, is compared to the current Minotaur and Field Manual. what everybody read was the points in the codex, which were way lower than this, with things like the 45-point bar because it hadn't gone through the indirect change and things like that.
Yep.
With relating it to just the index, not to the codex points that we all saw and went, oh my god, everything went down a bit. We're just going up a little bit
And
more.
that's
We're having
and that's why I put the
rules.
Munitorum points here, because that's really what we're comparing to. Because obviously the
Marine
codex went to
players
print before they made a whole bunch of changes.
Chill the fuck out. Challenge level impossible.
I
Nothing
do
here
think-
is bad. Lictors
Yeah.
lost an invulnerable save and went down 15 points. Fine. The Neurolictor is there if you still want with an invulnerable save. Hormagaunts went down a bit. They were already attractive. Things like Death Leaper. Death Leaper got a third invulnerable save and got cheaper and is now impossible to move. But don't worry about that. Nothing here is bad. There are very small point changes. The Biobore is the only real sad one. And I guess like the 20-point solo Ripper is a little less appealing than when they were 15. And you maybe only run one. You maybe run like one or two of them instead of two, instead of always running two.
Yeah,
Now-
I had to get a little creative here because originally it was 3 for 35. Now it's 3 for 60, and I wasn't sure how to do that, so just did it by the solo because that's the
Now-
lowest unit you can take it in.
The elephant in the room, obviously. If you scroll down a little bit from where you are on that picture, there's a little unit called the Tyrannothex that got taken out back.
just caught it.
They definitely just took the Tyrannothex fully
If
out
you
of the
were a
game.
Tyrannothex player, I'm really sorry. You got old Gellert.
I will say that 270 points for Swarmlord is like makes me wonder if
Yep.
somebody just got real bad touched by the Swarmlord.
I
That's
think
thing.
the idea there was that they are nerfing the free strats, so having the units that give you +1 CP just need to go up a little bit, which is weird because they
Sure.
dropped Azrael 15. But
No one was running
no.
Azrael.
I think
I
the Swarmlord
think-
is pretty poor. I don't think he was good before. I don't mind the Tyrant changes. The Zoanthrope changes are fine. People were spamming 18 of them. Put them up to 6 points a model. It's fine. Nothing in Tyranids here is like, it's fine, guys. Just chill out. We've got a new codex. We've got a ton of new options. Give it a chance to set. I'm not currently building Von Ryan's Leapers or anything.
Sure.
So
I'm gonna say that I'm sad, but I'm really excited to test Tyranids this weekend into people. So
me too. I
That's
definitely,
all.
if you all you
Looks really
did
good.
was look at the points. Yeah, that's the Swarmlord had a +1 CP and a Vec. That there was no way he was going unadjusted in a world where people were they're hitting CP abilities. Now,
he's too expensive.
he is, but I understand why. If you were just looking, if you looked at the Tyranid book points and you were like, I'm going to start writing lists with 45-point Biovores and Exequeens that went down 10 points, I got a bridge to sell you, please. DM me, drop me a line anytime.
This is small, but I do appreciate that someone was like, hey, lictors are now just the wish.com neurolictors, so they should probably be less expensive, right?
All right.
Cool. Let's
Yep.
do that.
The
We're
Lictor
leaving.
Alright, we
does rapid ingress for 0 and have damage to melee. Like the Lictor kills things in combat. The Neurolictor tickles things. There is still mileage to the Lictor.
Oh, yeah. I think it's a both and, but there's a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yep.
All
You
right.
take both. Just do
Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
We
No,
got
you
about
don't.
13
They-
minutes left before Innes has a hard out, so let's get the last two done and then we can go to our overall thoughts.
Yep.
World Eaters. Seems fine.
Points cuts across the
Seems
board.
fine. They're still going to be
Seems
bottom half.
Except for the Forge Fiend somehow.
Yeah, Force Fiends are too good, so they just hit them all.
Didn't the Lord of Skulls also go up?
No,
Or did he
Lord of
go
Skulls
down?
went down.
Oh, he did.
Because
go
he was
was
525 in the towering update, which he went up by like 110 points because they made him more expensive than the CSM Lord of Skulls. Now he's the same
The-
price as the CSM Lord of Skulls, so it's it's fine.
We
Yeah,
really-
I don't know
this
what they
one-
were thinking with that original change, but they reverted it and they said no, it's the same as the CSM one.
Jury is out on this one, I think.
Yeah.
We really got to see what the meta shifts to. With Custodes being taken down a couple pegs, that definitely gives the melee armies room to breathe. So does the Overwatch change. There has been rumblings that broad level that some people might start experimenting with hordes, and then hordes might actually have room to grow and breathe. If that's the case, then the profiles that World Eaters are bringing to bear might actually have a spot in the meta. If we stick to like monsters and vehicles and stuff like that, it might be a little bit too much for World Eaters to overcome, just because they didn't really get the same increase to strength, AP, and damage that a lot of the shooting profiles did.
They got the
But
strength.
their play pattern to where they basically start hitting a bunch of turn 1, turn 2 charges, and they hold you in your deployment zone for a couple turns. And by the time you break out, they've already ran away with the score. They have gotten better at that play pattern by virtue of putting more stuff on the table. So this one definitely will need some testing. Jury is out, but I think it looks promising. It's definitely better than it was.
I think World Eaters will stay bottom half, but they'll be closer to that middle zone of what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Like I think
It's
they'll still be a
also
sub 50
dependent-
win rate army, but
I think they might also have a rough time into Death Guard if Death Guard get more popular. I think if they slam into Death Guard, they might not come out of that one unscathed. So if Death Guard become popular, it might hold World Eaters back a little bit.
yeah, -1 to hit and -1 weapon skill is not a great combo in your pure melee army
Yeah.
that hits on 3s.
But movement in the right direction. We'll see if it ends up being enough.
Yeah, for sure. Angron's still a really good data sheet as well. So
I got an amazing data sheet.
he's the only Primarch I've not taken to a tournament yet.
Still
Yeah,
time.
Gotta get on that.
Too late.
I don't own a World Eaters army, so if anybody in the UK wants to lend me one for an RTT,
So someone want to lend Innis a Warhound, an Angron, and a Rampager?
if you got that, let's talk. I got a team event in December that I'm not meant to be trying at.
Because I think that is really close to 2,000 on the nose, because it's 380, 415, and 1,100. Yeah, you actually have a few points
Good.
left over.
Yeah, I get to run the enhancement guy, so I get to reroll my Bloodtide of Angron dice.
All right. And last but not least, we have Agents of the Imperium. There were only 3 changes here. Exaction Squad, we already covered it. They went to a 10-man, and they also went up 4 points a model. So they're now 110 for 10. I don't think you'll ever take these as Imperium allies again.
No, I think that unit doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Look at-
Kill team,
look at
as
this
we
as
said,
a-
Kill team players rejoice.
Look at this as a nerf to Custodes and to Imperial Knights, in addition to everything else.
Imperial Knights.
Shout out
Uh,
to the Gladius going down due to the changes in
Yeah, the Calidus went down 25 points, which was definitely a choice. That data sheet is still real good.
I think you run the Averser instead, though, because the Averser advance in actions.
Well, that's
My
good.
mileage, but
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, and the Averser is also only 75. So,
Mhm.
It could be-
and
even
then the
lost to run
Voidsman
both.
went up 2 points a model, so they're now 50 for 5. Again, nerf to Knights.
because they looked at them, they're like,
Stones.
well, if we're gonna make Exaction Squads terrible, we can't make these guys really cheap.
Some
One of America's
foresight by
Seductor
GW.
Squad.
Some foresight.
Kelly.
I don't actually know what that is. I just know that it's one of the various kill team things that was
Oh,
released.
it's it's one of the it's Exaction Squad, Subduction Squad, and the other one. They're the different kill teams for
There's a
Arbites.
variety of cop, space cop.
All right.
Yeah, it's basically an
Innis.
alternate build.
Do we want
Let's
to
start
do
with you.
summary and hot takes?
Yeah, Innis, summary and hot takes.
Summary hot takes. Eldar are still on top. There is a lot of room for number 2 right now. Some people think it's going to be Necrons. I think CSM, NIDS, GSC all have a decent argument for it still. It remains to be seen. There's a lot more room for experimentation in this meta. I definitely think it's more viable that you can take a game to Eldar now if you plan for it as well. Like Eldar are going to be a lot more mono build now because there are things that are good in that codex and things that aren't now. In a way that there just kind of wasn't. You can plan. You're just like, if Wraithguard are the thing that's good now, you just plan to be able to be Wraithguard in vehicles. If it's going to be infantry, if it's going to be Ynnari spam, like you at least know that there's guns that are going to have to be in the open to shoot you because one of them can fire and fade for 2 CP and the other one is stuck there. It can't phantasm. So if you can limit what they're shooting, if you can plan around that, then there is a world where you can beat Eldar players, and you probably will beat Eldar players that are not as good as you if you make a plan. The best Eldar players in the world are probably still going to win all the tournaments, but you get bad luck sometimes, so you just got to play to your outs. I'm really excited for Death Guard. I'm really excited for Blood Angels. I'm really excited for Dark Angels, and I am going to try Tyranids. I don't know what I'm excited about yet, but something in there will excite me.
Makes sense. Cliff, hot takes and overall summary.
I'll start with an overall summary. I think there are some shifts, really good work at the bottom of the meta. To Tim's point, that like GW in the past is sort of ignored, like leagues, Admech, Death Guard, cool stuff coming for them. I expect win rates in the aggregate for them to go up, and I expect player population for them to go up, which is cool. Like that'll be exciting. I don't think Eldar got hit enough. I don't think that's like particularly spectacular a take. They need more. They'll still be on top for a while. We'll have to wait another 3 months for that to happen. I'm a little frustrated by that, given how recently we've seen what it takes to bring a faction that is that dominant back down to earth. But yeah, we'll get there. My hot take is that like Tau look nasty given these points decreases, and I think it's probably, as always with a faction that's so shooting phase dominant and a particularly shooty version of 40k is potentially problematic depending on the matchup for them and to others. But we'll see. I look forward to painting up Aggressor Boys for Deathwatch and slamming a bunch of big monster bugs on the table in the next couple months.
Hell yeah.
Tim, what do you think?
My hot take will be that Death Guard are just massive runaway winners of the. I don't know if it's really a hot take, but I think they're the biggest winners, at least by proportion, and it's not even particularly close. Overall broad meta predictions, I think probably a 4-way tie for second place. I think Eldar are still kings, but not undisputably so. And I think that it's probably a 4-way tie between Orcs, Krons, Space Marines, and GSC. I think everything else really is going to come down to who has the biggest win rates and who has the biggest player population, what those lists coalesce to, and then how the rest of the meta revolves around that. And I think that's going to inform everything that we see for the next 3 months going forward.
Oh, I guess I can go. Sure.
I had a mouthful of food.
That's fine. I think the slate was fine. It wasn't what we wanted 100%, but it delivered on some stuff. And no slate was going to be perfect, which is fine. I do wish that they'd trended towards a little bit more perfection with Eldar and kind of hit them a little bit harder instead of grinding a couple factions into the ground that didn't necessarily need it. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the slate when you look at the whole thing together. A couple misses, one big one. That's fine. I think the top of the meta is going to shift a little bit to be more open, but Eldar are still going to be on top in the faction to beat most of the time. And like Innes said, if you're playing somebody who's better than you and they're playing Eldar, they're just going to beat you. Minus some weird shifty dice luck. I think the competition for the second place is a little bit closer. Necrons definitely are probably my favorite for it, but otherwise, I think CSM, Tyranids, maybe still Genestealer Cult, though I personally think Genestealer Cult might have fallen out of the top 5 factions. We'll just kind of see how that plays out. And that's just because I think people will kind of drop the faction a little bit more so than they have. I think we'll probably see shifts. Custodes are probably still fine. I'm a little disappointed in some of the changes to Guard because it feels like their identity is kind of a question mark right now. And Imperial Knights definitely didn't deserve to get annihilated from the sky.
Speak for yourself. I know you are currently speaking for yourself, but speak for yourself.
I am. I can only speak for myself, Innes, and I can't speak for other people, although sometimes I do it anyways, and it makes them upset. Prerogatives. But otherwise, 7.5 B, passing in grad school, perfectly acceptable data slate.
This would have been the best data slate of 9th edition for me.
Yes, this is by far the best data slate
out.
they've made so far, which is saying something. It
speaks to how out of whack the game is that this is the best data slate I've ever seen them print.
Yep.
I don't know. I would say that Armor of Contempt comes closer to that, but
I disagree. I think that was a bad data slate personally, but I just don't think that was
of Armor of Contempt.
Game, but
this slate definitely contains more changes.
Yes. All right. That's fair. And it is a more thorough top to bottom rebalance as opposed to just an effort to bring up the bottom and bring down the top. Because
one of the few slates that's done a really good job of actually hitting internal balance on factions and other things at the same time, right?
Yeah, like I just said. So for me, I kind of reiterate what I said at the very beginning of the cast. I like the slate. I think it was good. I'd give it probably a 7 out of 10. Again, passing could have been better, but definitely could have been a lot worse, especially given that they originally just committed to doing points at this pass. The fact that they did both points and rules was amazing. The rule changes that they did, I like most of them. The battle tactic strat change is the only one that I think is going to cause some headaches. Point changes, I like most of them. Eldari could have been hit harder, but everyone's already said that. Yeah, let's go Necrons. I'm also a little worried about Necrons, but just add more blast weapons and it's fine.
That's the chain swords line. That's the chain swords line for this cast. Congratulations, Jeremy. just bring more blast weapons. It says noted content creator and player Jeremy.
God damn it.
Damn it, Jeremy.
Look in your codex.
At least I don't actually play
Find
Necrons.
the battle tactics. Find the blast weapons.
God damn it. Yeah, but I can't read my codex. I don't have a codex.
I can.
Yeah, you can as of Saturday. I know. My hot take: Votan's going to win a GT in the next 3 months. Guarantee it.
Yep.
I think every faction that doesn't have a GT win will pick one up in the next 3 months, except maybe
Tau.
Admech.
No,
Tau are
Tau
going
will
to pick
get
up
it too.
multiple. They're going to pick
Yeah.
up. They're going to
Yeah.
be a
Yeah.
faction
In the
that's
next
going
4
to
weeks.
fly.
Midwest US is already like cycling iron blaster production factory.
Yeah, they're real excited. I mean,
I'm
everybody
looking forward to
owns
the
triple
Crisis
Riptides
unit.
anyways.
I'm looking forward to the Crisis Unit refresh, which locks them to not having Sibs.
I am convinced that Tau will probably have a definite shoe in for second best faction in the game, depending on what happens with their player base.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
In a shooting edition with movement, which they've got, and loan up abuse, which they also
So
have.
much loan up abuse there. Yeah. It's
Mhm.
All right, Ennis, I know you had a hard out now, but we'll stick
I
around.
can stick around for another couple of minutes.
Okay.
It was more of I don't want to still be talking about the main topic at 6:30. I have a call at 7, so I need to leave in like the next shortly.
That makes more sense. So yeah,
I
just
believe
any
in just a
questions
second.
that the
Try to
holy
call it
shit,
something.
140 of you have?
Yep. We asked questions from chat from Discord. Do we want to start with those?
Yeah, let's start with the
Donald,
Discord.
I will bet you $10 that is not the case.
That they don't see more than a 50% win rate.
Here's
I
the bet. $10 says it goes up about 50% in the next 3 weeks.
There
I'll bet you
was
that one of Brian and Nassim will win a GT with them in the next 3 months, let alone anybody else.
There was a
Yeah.
question about patriarchs that I tried to put up, and then Jeremy immediately took it down. Now I'm struggling.
That's because we
find
both put up a question at the same time. We're going to do Discord questions first, and then we'll do chat questions.
Word.
So Tom H asks, transport meta now?
Always was.
Always was.
Always has been.
Shout out to Tom Pawnee getting what looked like a 3-course meal for lunch.
If you take care of people you care about, they will take care of you.
Eating good.
All right. All right, Jake B. I packed up all my models because I'm moving. What order should I unpack them? World Eaters, Chaos Knights, Tyranids, and Death Guard.
Tyranids, Death Guard, Chaos Knights, Warriors.
Yeah.
The Tyranids are real good, and I just
All
need to
right,
figure out what.
Zane, I'm skipping over your question because we already kind of did this. Adam asks, what's Brian now playing?
Eldar. Like,
Yeah,
come on,
Eldar.
it's Brian. Brian's playing the best army in the game.
Yeah, you can still play Eldar, just you don't have to be an apologist about it anymore.
You probably still do.
A little bit.
I mean,
You
probably.
do a little bit.
That one guy, John, you asked where GSE pivot from now. Scroll back to when we talked about GSE point changes. Innis did a really good overview
Play the
of
same
what
list,
changes.
Cotton Acolyte Squad, and Cotton Exos.
Grant H and Maglin both ask stink.
Stinky objectives, stinky meta.
Yeah.
Oh, big stink time.
All right. That one guy asks again, please explain what the change in towering is. I am too smooth brain to
I
understand.
did that to him. I did have intro discussions, but basically it's 9th edition obscuring.
Yeah. Grant asks, what characters are you now taking in Death Guard? Obviously, Foul Blight Spawn and Putrefire noted.
Typhus, Mortarian, Foul Blight Spawns, Biology Putrefire are good. I would consider still the Lord of Virulence, depending on how hard you want to lean into making your playbook scroll or shoot better. And then the Tallyman is usually pretty good to just sell your home objective.
All right. Jake B asks, knowing which stratagems or battle tactics is important. Without looking, can each of you name one of the other stratagem types without repeating? I can't do this because I just finished making a sheet of them.
Wargear.
No, you only get to make one. You only get to name one.
Oh, okay. Wargear. There we go.
Epic deeds.
God.
Well done.
And Tim or Cliff, there's one more.
Command reroll.
That's not a
It's
type.
battle tactic. That's a
No,
Battle
we already said
tactic,
battle
buddy.
tactic.
Command reroll. I'm not here to think.
It's strategic play.
Thank you. Yeah.
I stole the second. I stole the second easiest one because I knew I couldn't remember the other
The Calidus data sheet is now reads command reroll now costs 2 CP for your opponent with upside.
All right. How do you explain to GW that power level by proxy is a problem? I.e., my Echoes are now more PPM when really the demo charges are the issue.
I make them play a mirror match for me where I get gun rate knights and they get sword and board ones, and we try to.
I think they're just going to keep cutting points by 5 points per unit until people stop complaining.
Yeah.
All right. Florian actually asked a really good question here. At the moment, anybody tells you what the meta is going to be now, they're probably lying or delusional. But how much time needs to pass before we can actually draw some solid conclusions?
2 weeks.
2
That's it.
weeks.
2 weeks. It's enough. Three if you really want to be sure, but 2 is
This
enough.
weekend is going to be a mess. Next weekend, we should start to get an idea. And the weekend after that, we should have a fairly solid picture.
Yeah.
We will not know everything, and there will always be lists that people miss that will come out of the woodwork. But that is when we start to get a solid idea of what the things that you should be planning around are.
Yeah.
I will say-
To clarify, 2 weeks would be enough for like 2 draw conclusions, not enough to have a 100% accurate read of what the meta shakeout is.
Yeah.
We'll never have a 100% accurate read.
We never really do, because every now and then someone like Eric Lathoris comes along with a build that just changes things.
Yeah, or like WTC happens, and like LGT will do the same thing, right? Like we have LGT in 3 weeks. That will be the first time that I'm really looking at like whatever. I reckon whatever comes out of LGT as like the top 16 is probably pretty close to what the best in the armies in the game are, with maybe like 1 or 2 exceptions based on performance and variance.
And then similarly, you'll see an impact at Tampa, because again, really large event, lots of top players going. And then the World Championships will be where you really see all of those things shine. But yeah, by the end of
World
September, I think we'll have a really good idea of
this block.
all right, Jeff, aspiring forklift champion, because you have the best name. I have to read the whole thing. Every time I fall asleep, I dream of my great-great-grandfather fighting in the United States Civil War. It's absolute hell, and it always ends the same way, him being killed by his brother who fought for the Confederacy. When I wake up, the visions fade, but they continue to linger for longer periods of time each day. I find myself struggling with anger at things that never bothered me before. Considering this, should I start playing Blood Angels, and how does this data slate affect them?
The fucking trolling.
Yes, you should. Also,
Yes,
seek
you
the
should.
nearest
Definitely.
person named Lamartese.
God
Go
damn it, I
find
couldn't
your
keep this-
nearest Lamartese to have a good conversation.
Go
with
Dev
them.
Company.
Or if you can't, just go on Netflix and watch Dante's Inferno and just at least get an idea that like the chapter master's around for you. You should definitely
Also-
just run like a bunch of Death Company squads with 5 Parafists and Inferno pistols are real good. There's a bunch of great characters put in them, whether that's Lamartie's, Asterath, or the generic Chaplain. Sanguinary Guard are probably still too expensive, but I really like the Librarian Dreadnought. It's pretty good for like chucking units up the board with the 2+, and Ingress is still great. So lean into that. I'm going to go down and look at this arm again.
Yeah, that for other context, someone had submitted that as asking if it was too far. And I said, no, go for it. What's the best army to spam infantry that moved 12 inches? Blood Angels?
No, it's
Vanguard,
just,
Death Companies, Inceptors, Warp Spiders, Venatari, Warp Talons, Exalted Ape. No, it's Blood
it's Shadow
Angels.
Specters.
No,
They don't move 12
24
inches, but they move 24 inches. That's why they're
That's why
better.
Not Vanguard Tyranids with advance and charge. Oh,
That's
they move 24?
close.
No, they're
They
moving 10.
do. They
move.
do sometimes. Sorry. Sorry. We're into the phase where none of us are paying attention to talking order anymore.
It doesn't matter. At this
Are
point,
we
we're
ever?
vamping. All right, we have 2 more questions to go. Should Feel No Pains versus Mortal Wounds have been changed to include Devastating Wounds too?
No.
No, that was part of the intended nerf.
I would actually say that is part of the intended nerf. Because if not, then they would have changed the shield host attachment rule.
Yep.
I don't think that they need it.
They don't need a feel no pain against everything.
Yeah. And then Nick asks, would it really ruin GW's profits / release schedule / ego to give Votan a full army? I mean, I see them getting a second wave this edition. The fact is that they're a brand new army that I'm pretty sure has a deeper range than Harlequins did when they were their own army.
I'd be extremely surprised if World Eaters and Votan didn't get second waves this edition.
Yeah.
Yep.
Come the holidays.
Maybe Thousand Tons as well, frankly.
Yeah.
World Eaters and Votan are actually popular, though.
I do want a couple new Harlequins units. That's all.
That would be nice, but they're not a real army anymore.
What would my... So the only bear that's a good bear is the owl bear, and it's because you can jump from high points and murder people due to falling damage with it. That's all. That's
The
my
plunge
change
and
on
fire.
bears.
Plunge and
Yeah.
fire out there.
You're a bear hater?
No, I thought
Anthony's the bear hater. Oh,
time
God.
out.
Sorry,
Let's
Ben.
rewind.
All right.
I don't
Before
know
we get
why people are
completely
asking
lost,
this question.
I do want to actually take some questions from the chat, and one of
Yeah.
those is the one that Tim tried to highlight earlier. Does the dev wounds change and reduction to pure strains make patriarchs more worthwhile?
More worthwhile, yes, but actually worthwhile remains to be seen. I think they are still too expensive and too fragile, and the not coming back even more makes them even sketchier. It's just, again, it's not a damage profile you're really looking for from Gene Circles, right? Like damage 1 dev wounds, like there's tons of sources of like 1 damage stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd
I
agree.
struggle to think of why I would want it.
Same
But
question.
I don't think it's like actively trolling.
Same question, Gene Sealers and
Genestars were actually one of the few units that got nerfed in the Tyranid Codex. They don't get full rule to wound anymore. They get rule 1s to wound, so it's even harder for them to proc their dev wounds. So I generally don't like that data sheet at all. I think like there's better things to do in Vanguard Invasion.
So James Workshop asks, does Innes know what fruit is?
No, not at all. I've never once interacted with a fruit. Could you please tell me what that is?
Have you seen England? It doesn't exactly have a bunch of fruit just growing everywhere.
No,
I don't
Scotland
know. Their
does.
pride parades are pretty cool.
And that's fair.
Not a question, but I thought this was worth highlighting.
Accurate. It's
Yeah, that
420
Valorous
points
can
for that
come
block.
come in
but
6-man
it is
blocks.
possible.
Yeah.
Yep, run-of-the-mill Land Raider.
Aggressors in a Land Raider is definitely something that I just want to try on TTS at some point, just because it sounds hilarious.
I ran it last night, and yeah, it's very dumb. Especially now that they're 20 points cheaper for 6.
Mm-hmm.
How would your Deathwing Knights do, Jeremy? I remember I read that story.
Oh yeah. So I played into Cameron, who's watching right now, in a league game. He was playing Blood Angels. I was playing my Dark Angels. I was futzing around. And the Deathwing Knight brick ran straight through 10 Blood Angels Terminators with a captain, 10 Sanguinary Guard with Dante attached to them, another 5 Death Company with a chaplain attached to them, and only lost 6 models.
It's like 1,000 points of stuff. 800 points.
Well, I mean, now it's closer to 800 points, but yeah.
I have no idea where that guy's arm went. Anyway.
Turns out that flat 2 damage really doesn't like -1 damage.
Shocked. I'm truly incredible.
That's still Eldar, Aaron, for sure.
Yeah, I still get
Whatever I'm playing, Aaron, obviously. Come on.
Innis is the correct answer. That's what army is favored to win.
Didn't know Innes was playing Eldar.
No, Innis is just who I'm favoring to win LGT. That's all.
Yes, I know. So he's playing Eldar.
I think he is actually. Innis, aren't you playing Eldar at LGT?
I'm definitely not playing Eldar at LGT.
Oh, strange. We've already submitted your list for you.
That's cool. I take it as well.
It's definitely 3 Wraith Knights with Sword and Board as well.
Fuck yeah. Am I playing Rob Curtis round 1?
Yes, definitely.
We still need to convince Brian to change his list for Saturday.
Mm.
Yes.
All right. Is there anything else we want to cover before we head off? Oh, general announcements, scuff plugs. If you've enjoyed what we've done here today, we have a regular show every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Pacific, some ungodly hour in Europe.
11 p.m. BST. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like midnight CET. Yeah, we have, check out our website, stat-check.com. Check us out on YouTube at youtube.com/statcheck/c/statcheck. The /c doesn't matter anymore.
Does it not?
No, I've just been too I've been enjoying it too much to correct you on that. If you're interested in getting some help with the game, we have some top players in Typhus and Innis who offer coaching. Check us out at stat-check.com/coaching or email us at coaching@stat-check.com. Yeah, all of the resources that we've been talking about today, the points update, the stratagem references are going to be linked in the show notes. I am also going to update our little list builder that I built at the beginning of the edition with the new points if people want to use it. Apparently, it still gets a fair amount of traffic.
Our YouTube
also,
we got tagged in a YouTube video that was using the list builder.
Hell yeah. And also add to that, check out our sponsor, Saltire Games in the UK. They do some really cool battle aids and other general game swag that, just I ended up buying a full set for everyone on Team Canada when we headed over. So go check them out. They're on Etsy. The link will be in the show notes. Also check out the Red Dragon in Ottawa. It's my home store. They sponsor the show. If you want to support us on Patreon, patrons get a 15% discount code off the entire store. Yeah, that's where we're at. And last but not least, we have the California Cup, the Cali Cup, coming up in November, where the Stat Check crew is going to be present. We are going to have Innes and Anthony putting on a series of masterclasses before the event. The links for those should go up shortly, maybe in the show notes. If not, I'll make sure that they go in there once they're updated. And then we will also be doing coverage, myself and Nathan, of the event, providing real-time statistics and kind of commentary on where the event is going and how it's looking in the grand scheme of overall stats. So you can check that out at don't know the actual address for the California Cup, so I'm going to look it up right now. It's just CaliforniaCup.com. No, it's not
I
CaliforniaCup.com.
think it's 40K is in there as well.
Yeah, it's California Cup.
California Cup 40K.com. Yeah.
It is California Cup 40K.com. Yeah.
There you go. California Cup 40K.com, because the regular one is, I think, a football site.
That would make more sense. Yes.
It would. So check all of that out. Check us out on Tuesdays. We also have X and One, which is it this week or is it next week? My brain is fried.
It should be
Next
this
week.
Next week.
Next week.
Right?
So X and Week,
Next week.
we have Cliff and we have Tim, who they cover all sorts of topics related to getting the most out of your hobby and getting the most out of your time as busy professionals and dads. I'm sure that there's going to be a fair amount of discussion of where big boy time goes after this next week. Also check out Typhus, who couldn't join us today. Typhus and Nathan Roberts, they run Enter the Matrix, which is a show focused on 40K teams, and especially in particular the World Team Championships, the WTC. They just went live last night where they were talking about how prep for the next WTC starts the day after the WTC ends. And so check that out. That should be every other week, so that'll be in 2 weeks' time. And then you can check us out on wherever you can find podcast feeds and the like.
And man, these models are fucking awesome.
The one right
Oh,
now
yes.
is really nice.
Sleepers.
All right. Anyone else have anything else to say before we say bye-bye?
Fuck Eldar.
Bye-bye. And goodbye.